Okay, good evening. This is after some slight technical delays. This is the June 23rd, 2025 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. This is initially a joint meeting with the Master Plan Working Group. Before we get that started, a couple of quick announcements. Number one, I want to note and observe a moment of silence for the passing of our Planning Board member Justin Wood's father-in-law, Rich Whitney, who is someone I've known since my days in the 90s on the Conservation Commission. He's been a great value to this town, and he will be sorely missed. So just a moment of silence in memory of Rich. Okay, thank you. And the other quick announcement I'll make, and we can elaborate on that further later on in the meeting, but it's with great pleasure that I'd like to announce that at the annual Central Mass Regional Planning Commission meeting and awards dinner last week on Thursday evening, the town of Grafton was given a community planning award, which some of us were very, very proud to be there to accept on the behalf of Grafton. Which is kind of exciting, and it stems substantially from but not entirely from the work we've done in the master plan. So with that, I'd like to dive right into the joint meeting with the Master Plan Working Group, for which I have to wear another hat. I'm the chairman of the Master Plan Working Group, and I believe we have a quorum of the working group present in this meeting, either in the room or on Zoom, so I will call the roll of the Master Plan Working Group. Bob Carroll. Present in this meeting, either in the room or on Zoom, so I will call the roll of the Master Plan Working Group. Bob Carroll. And I'm not hearing any audio from the Zoom participants.
You just got one.
Present in this meeting, either in the room or on Zoom, so we will call the roll of the Master Plan Working Group. Bob Carroll.
Bob's here.
Okay, thank you.
The audio is very soft.
President of this meeting, Bob Carroll.
Yeah, Dave, we can't hear a thing.
Bob's here. The audio is very soft.
Yeah.
Some kind of loop.
Yeah, Dave, we can't hear a thing.
Bob's here. The audio is very soft.
These are all repeats. This is like a loop. Audio coming back.
Sue's
on cable.
Yeah, Dave, we can't hear a
Runs the
thing.
parking lot.
But it's not that long.
The audio is very soft.
This is a first. I don't think I've ever seen this happen.
Yeah,
Not
we
quite-
normally
well,
are.
not exactly
Progress.
like this.
Yeah, Dave, we can't hear a thing.
It keeps echoing back. It's really weird.
Yeah, well, there's something connected up there that.
Not that kind of delay, though.
Progress.
We're still trying to work out what we can do here with.
Power cycle your device.
Normalize it by muting.
Unplug it and plug it in.
Power cycling.
That's the way I made my living.
Progress.
Have you power cycled your
Anything that
device?
will
What does
wrong
that mean?
means yank or other way around.
The guy that gave me the most trouble in the office next to me. About 60-70% of the time. Turn it on.
Audio is
Turn
coming
it on.
Sue.
It would
It's
work.
coming into the room and then going back to her microphone.
There's a somewhat of a delay on the cable, on the live feed on cable, and that might.
It seems like it stopped.
Activating
I don't know if that's because someone's muted or if it's actually stopped, but. Okay.
So I started the roll call for the working group. I got Bob Carroll's response. Victoria Duckworth in the room. I don't know if anybody on Zoom is hearing me.
I can hear you, Dave. This is Brian.
Okay.
Ah,
Mr.
That's
Bob
good.
Carroll is no longer a panelist.
I don't know if anybody on Zoom is hearing me.
I can hear you. This is Brian.
When she's unmuted.
well,
There seems to be a delay.
I don't know if anybody on Zoom is hearing me.
I can hear you.
Technology. Why did we ever?
Make the motion to extend past 10 now.
There seems to be a delay.
no. My wife used to, when she was here. Oh, she was the one that always reminded us. Yeah.
There seems to be a delay.
At least
Saying that he can do anything to fix the loop, but I think Bill's gonna come and try and. Yeah.
I'm going to try another step or two with the roll call of the working group. Lindsay Fox. Anne Marie Foley, you're in the room. Deborah George. We're going to try another step or two with the roll call of the working group. Lindsay. Anne Marie Foley.
I have no idea what's going on, to be honest with you.
Shall we, did you say Bill is coming over to try to look at this?
Is it someone's panelist link or something?
Sue's off mute.
But she keeps unmuting every time I mute her.
Because she's trying to answer that she's here.
I don't know if she is though.
So you got an attendees not able to talk. Bob,
Sue, I'm
Deborah.
gonna boot you out. Come back in, okay?
Okay, okay.
There is an attendee who is the name Bob raising the hand. That might be Bob Carroll.
You got Deborah, who you called on too, and attendees.
Dave might just give it.
Hi, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to be working better, but it doesn't look like I'm a panelist. Maybe now I am. There we go.
Might be Deborah George. I'll promote her to panelist too.
All right, David, I thought I heard you call the roll. I'm here.
Yeah, I'm sort of working my way through the role, but we're,
If I may make a suggestion, let's just start from scratch because it's been a little back and forth. So sorry but I missed everything that was done.
It seemed like when I rejoined, it worked okay. Was the initial, when I was in the lobby and then got promoted, it didn't work right.
all right, so we're still in the middle of the master plan working group roll call. I'll start again from the top. See who we all have here. Bob Carroll,
Bob Carroll's here.
Victoria Duckworth, Anne Marie Foley. Deborah George.
Deborah is here.
Brian Hool.
Ryan Hool's here.
Chantel Kimball.
Here.
Essex Petrie. David Robbins is here. Sue Robbins
Has not yet rejoined.
has not yet rejoined. And Colleen Roy, not present. So we have, at this moment, 7 members of the working group present, which constitutes a quorum. So we'll proceed with the business here. The Master Plan Working Group has been working for the last couple of years with Sarah and staff at Central Mass Regional Planning and our town planner Fiona and other town staff to prepare an update of the Town of Grafton Master Plan, which was last updated about 25 years ago. Last week, the Master Plan Working Group voted to forward the draft master plan to the Planning Board for the Planning Board's review and approval. The Planning Board is the ultimate approving authority for the master plan. So we are here tonight to make, I think, a brief presentation of the master plan to the Planning Board, and then for the Planning Board to discuss as it sees fit. And ultimately, the Planning Board is being asked to vote to approve the master plan.
My colleague Mike is in the waiting room,
Okay, I'll promote.
or not as a panelist, I guess is the right way to say it.
I figured.
Test, test, test. That sounds better.
We hear you.
Fantastic.
Hopefully the tech issue.
I haven't met everybody in this room, so I'm Sarah O'Brien. I'm here from the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. We have a few members in public from our committee. Hello! Shout out Victoria, shout out Anne-Marie. Weird to be here without Victoria's cat, I'll say, but we'll try to keep going. Do we have
Yes.
a little press?
We do.
Cool. So for the purposes of tonight, I don't want to give a comprehensive lowdown of everything that's in the master plan because we'd be here for a while. But we wanted to give just an overview of what the process has been like and what some key takeaways are. So you can understand how the master plan should be used and a little bit of context about what's generally included in a master plan. So we'll start with the first slide is what a master plan is in Massachusetts, because it's different in every state. So in Massachusetts, you do not need approval by the state. So you might have gone through a housing production plan process where you do need to bring the document to the state. For master plans in Massachusetts, it only needs to be a planning board vote. I believe Fiona has also opted for a town meeting vote in the fall as well as a supplemental vote, but this plan does not need to go through state approval. The section in Massachusetts general law just gives general chapter ideas of what should be included, and kind of sees it more as a framework than real policy. So nothing in this plan is law, nothing in this plan is set forward. It's really just meant to guide decision making as we go forward. So you can use it during budget discussions, staffing and resource discussions, of course, planning board meetings and any changes to the zoning bylaws and town bylaws to see, does this align with what's in the master plan? So it's really meant to be consensus building for, okay, we're doing a lot of day-to-day things in the town. Departments are doing different things. Chairs are doing different things. What is our shared vision that we're all working towards? And what are obstacles to that vision? And what are little steps that we could take towards this goal? So it's very aspirational. If you're not an optimistic person at heart, you hate a master plan because it's okay, how is this all going to be funded? How are we going to do all of this? We try to get to a little bit of that in the implementation matrix when we talk about grants and resources. But yes, to answer the question beforehand, it is extremely aspirational. We're looking at utopia. We're looking at town planning in its best form. So of course, things might come into the way of implementing it, and master plans do have a reputation for maybe sitting on a shelf when you get to year 7 because it might be irrelevant and things have changed. But to keep in mind that if we keep using the master plan during little discussions, bringing it up in planning board meetings, yes, this aligns with the master plan in XYZ way, that's a way to keep it fresh and keep it in use in your head. So our timeline here, we started in December 2022 with the kickoff. This was phased a little differently than usual. So we started with data analysis and got all the data collection done in early 2023, and then started community engagement in spring of 2023 with a community survey that got 432 responses between March and September. And then we used that to kind of inform a few community workshops. We started with the first one in May 2023 that was at Apple Tree Arts as just an introduction to the public. This is what a master plan is. This is long range planning. And then had a farmers market table in June of that year, which was very similar of just introducing the process to the public. We followed it up with a more concrete workshop in October at Grafton High School, and that was different tables for every chapter that's in the master plan with people from CMRPC there to go deeper into the themes that we saw in the survey and the few workshops of, okay, what are real goals of each chapter? And that workshop I love because it's not a public meeting. Nobody has to be at a microphone, but it's more one-on-one conversations, and we could get really deep into, how many parking spaces people want at Silver Lake. November, we started doing the vision statement with the committee to really start to understand the direction that we wanted the town to go in these recommendations, followed by goals and strategies in January and February. We had an additional workshop in January 2024. This was out of the scope of the original plan, but we were seeing economic development and small business as a huge theme of this plan. So we had more of an invite business owners, entrepreneurs in Grafton come and talk to members of CMRPC at that workshop about specifically how the town could support business owners. And then we started draft chapter review. That took about a year to do 8 chapters. And then we just had the public comment period in May of 2025. Shout out to Fiona for going above and beyond to publicize the public comment period. It certainly wasn't phoned in on the town side. We received about 68 comments from the public on recommendations to the plan. You can still see those as a deliverable in the appendix of the plan. And I think they are very interesting for your day-to-day things that might not have worked in the master plan, but it's a great way to get feedback from the town. You also have the raw survey results in the appendix that I think could be used for other purposes as well. And here we are, June 17th, last week, the working group went over the public comments and decided which ones to implement. And as Dave mentioned, approved the plan for the planning board. So for the vision statement, I'm not going to read it out loud, but I'll tell you the gist. Something interesting about Grafton is we really decided to focus on neighborhood levels for Grafton, thinking about the different intricacies of each village area and how we could, make each one its own little center. So we're thinking about how to be supportive communities, how to add multimodal transportation, especially for people who can't drive, thinking about students going to and from schools and really feeling more connected to their exact neighborhood rather than the goal of trying to unite all of Grafton together for a giant community. We're also thinking about how to balance growth, how to consider the needs of housing while also considering the needs of rural, forested, beautiful Grafton. We're thinking about the rights and interests of Indigenous people through all decision making that's made at the town level, and education as a huge draw to the town that the town should continue to promote. So for the chapters, this is not everything that's in every chapter, but we did add the more general goal statements and just a few bullet points of what you could expect as the idea of the chapter. My apologies if this font is tiny. The first goal for housing is focusing future housing development in the village centers. So thinking higher density, and of course that's relative to Grafton, so we're thinking more than 1 or 2 units in one area, rather than large subdivisions that would clear cut forests. We're also thinking about expanding the supply and diversity of housing. So we expect your population to age and to grow. So what are the needs of senior residents that might be aging out of their family homes? And what are the needs of young families that could offset the population aging that might want smaller, more affordable options? The third goal is to increase affordable housing stock. So the example here is promoting ADUs as an option, but also to coordinate affordable housing and give more resources to the town so affordable housing is in the way that the town wants to see it, that works well for Grafton residents. For economic development, we think about the future of key economic sectors. This whole region is still coming back from deindustrialization. So this chapter thinks about, okay, how do we get ahead of the next curve? What's the next thing that's going to come in and be big for the tax base? So we go two different directions on this. One is those large scale, more industrial areas that could, maybe not be as attractive to Grafton residents, but could really help the tax base. So thinking about North Grafton, of course, but other areas that might be less large scale than you might think for industry, in ways that Governor Healy has been talking about really wanting to push money into. So that's climate tech, that's biomanufacturing, if there's spillover from Worcester, or more coming from the eastern side of the state. How can Grafton be prepared infrastructure wise and permitting wise to allow that to happen? And the other point we talk about in goal 1 is on the other side of this, thinking about Grafton's natural assets and ecotourism, or AKA people coming into Grafton for a day trip, to go on a hike, to go on a bike ride, to go on a waterfront, and maybe they go get an ice cream after. And that's a fantastic way to get people into the town without putting a huge, you're not a tourist town, but you're still getting that money from visitors, and restaurants are doing better. Goal 2 is about retaining and attracting businesses and increasing employment opportunities. So this gets into a little bit of workforce development on the local side, but also that partnership between the town and local businesses. And the third goal here is encouraging economic development in village centers. So that smaller, mom and pop shop idea in those neighborhoods, how can we make that happen? So it's thinking especially about mixed use and infill development, which is what we call when, there's already things going on in an area, but it could just be a little more packed together. For transportation, we are thinking about safety first, traffic calming, how to slow drivers, how to prevent accidents and deaths on the roadways. So we're thinking about the most dangerous intersections that we heard about through community engagement, but also data, and also encouraging multimodal transportation. That also works with goal 1. How do we expand sidewalks, bike lanes, and trail networks for people who can't drive, and connecting people to Grafton's opportunities of public transit that aren't necessarily used for day-to-day travel, but can be an asset to the town of the WRTA and the MBTA. And the third goal here is for emerging transportation technologies, aka if everybody in Massachusetts bought an electric vehicle tomorrow, the state grid would be shot. So how do we at town levels get ready for the electric grid, but also for stormwater best practices of mitigating the climate effects of the road network, thinking about how rainwater is washing into groundwater and surface waters, and the best practices for bridges, culverts, and that kind of jam. For town services and facilities, this chapter is tricky in the master plan. It's not a capital improvement plan. It is not comprehensive. It's really thinking about those specific town services and facilities that match up with the other chapters, especially the 3 we just talked about. So we're looking at population growth. We're looking at slightly changing the housing pattern. What kind of services and facilities do we need to accommodate that growth? So for the first goal for services, we saw anticipating the needs of an aging population as the first goal here. For the second one, when we talk about facilities, we saw the fire department was in most need of assistance for their stations that are a little bit on the older side. And the third one is about capacity, more on the town side for infrastructure. Again, going back to industry that we talked about and planning for that population growth. For open space and resources, or recreation, my apologies. This is everybody's favorite chapter. We talk about how to enhance Grafton's existing open space and recreation. So connecting it to the economic development chapter as, this is a reason why people can come to Grafton. And how do we put more resources into what you already have, promoting the trails, the water resources, and expanding trails and that sort of thing. And the second goal here is about agriculture. So seeing that as open space, how do we keep farmers in town? How we remain those roots as, part of town being agricultural, and support that agritourism. Or for example, Community Harvest Project is like the example of agritourism, like getting people to go onto a farm and interact with it in that way. Natural and cultural resources. gets into natural resources and cultural resources. So the first one is natural, thinking about water resources, groundwater and surface, ecosystem, habitats, wildlife crossings came up in our committee as a point of concern as a town with a highway. And the second goal is preserving the historic character and cultural resources. So this is the chapter where we look at supporting the indigenous community through their preservation of their culture and thinking about more of the administrative side of keeping historical resources in Grafton. So protecting them from natural hazards and getting teared down. Land use chapter is kind of a summary of everything. Because all the chapters are so siloed, this one puts it all together. So goal 1 is about maintaining the balance between open space and new growth. So that's shifting development pressure away from those rural areas. And goal 2 gives you the answer to goal 1, pushing that demand or pressure from rural open areas to the village districts as the solution for economic development and housing in the future. The goal 3 is just keeping things up to date, so making sure Grafton's bylaws, that could be town and zoning bylaws, remain fit for the needs of a changing town. So the master plan is always going to be a little bit vague, knowing conditions are changing and the town just continues to adapt to those changes. And goal 4 is, hey, there's a lot of things in this master plan that we're asking to do, making sure Grafton has the capacity to implement the master plan. And our last chapter is an add-on that Grafton requested, so we had fun with it. This is quality of life. So our goal 1 was advancing communication between Grafton and residents. This is something that came up, I would call it the biggest theme that we heard over all of the community engagement, is looking for more communication from boards, committees, departments, town meeting, things that the town of Grafton is doing to and with Grafton residents. So we have some idea of how Grafton could do it, but that is just open-ended as a goal. Goal 2 is increasing volunteerism and civic capacity. This is also a strategy to implement the master plan. So thinking about getting more people at the table, what's stopping people from volunteering, and some strategies there to welcome more Grafton residents into volunteering for the town. And goal 3 is creating and sustaining networks for housing and food security. So this talks more about that social net of making sure the food network is strong. So that's also permitting more restaurants, places to buy food, but also food security work and housing. So preparing for future potential of refugee or immigrant populations, as it's happened in the past when the state has a group of refugees that they're putting in places. Does Grafton have a plan for how those people would be accommodated? Woo! Was that 10 minutes?
That was pretty good.
Our last thing is the implementation matrix. So this is, what are all the recommendations in the plan? When should they be done? What's their priority? How much could they cost? Of course, the cost estimate is subject to change, but just an idea of, pamphlets for new residents is not going to cost over $500,000. Maybe that's something we could do without a budget line item. It also has a lead. So this is the person that could be expected to get the ball rolling on a project, not necessarily to do it by themselves, but to kind of champion that specific action item. And we also give our best guess of resources and funding sources. So that's grants on the state and federal level, as well as loans, nonprofits and organizations like Chamber of Commerce or a regional land trust that can help you on these action items. Some CMRPC projects that you could tap into that we get money from the state to help Grafton with, that you've done a great job of taking advantage of, and local boards and committees that also should be at that table during those discussions. Fantastic. That's all I have. I'm happy to take questions.
Record time.
So thank you, Sarah. As previously noted, this basically is now before this board for this board's consideration, and ultimately this board is the one that approves this master plan. So let me open this to discussion from the planning board members. Any questions or comments or thoughts?
Yes, I mean, I went through the whole thing and have some notes and comments. Do you want to go by section, or, how do you want to do the discussion?
Probably, unless anybody has a better idea, let's kind of go through it section by section. And
all right.
if anybody
Great,
has
yeah,
any
so I'm just
overall
taking them from
comments.
the order they are in the Dropbox. But first of all, I mean, it looks like a lot of amazing work went into it. Really, appreciate all the thought that went into it, and there's a lot here, right? And I love kind of all the intentions that are in here. I guess I just have some questions or some comments about, how some of these things, and maybe you can guide me in terms of my getting too specific or whatever. But these are the things that I wonder about. So I guess I'll go with economic development for a moment, and just share some questions and comments, and then other people can chime in on economic development. But I think in terms of the two paths, right, the innovation hub versus the ecotourism piece, I think the innovation thing, it's nice, but it's very difficult considering like the assets we have now. I'm actually involved with some of this work in Worcester itself, and so there's a lot of oomph and like big grants going there. So it's possible that a facility becomes, desirable to have here, but to be a hub, I think that's tough. I really like the ecotourism bent because it uses what we already have, and it's something we can act on pretty quickly. Whereas, I'm just sharing, my own experience of working on the innovation hub stuff in Worcester is it's got high potential, but it's hard to do that here when you're competing with a Worcester or something like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of advocate that we lean into the ecotourism thing. I think there's a lot of talk about mixed use, right? And I see the data that 78% of people want more small businesses, more eating and drinking. I would just put in there that if we want mixed use, I think we need to make it mandatory in some places because it hasn't been mandatory in some of the village bylaws, and then it's been bypassed by the developers, right? We've had instances where it morphs into a purely residential building, and then it's technically allowed. So we're really not in a position to stop it, but it's not achieving some of the intentions that we had in there, right? So I think if we want to meet the demands of what people are asking for in terms of more small businesses, eating and drinking establishments, and we want mixed use, we may need to be more specific when we, kind of put forth a new bylaw or anything like that. And then I guess, and this might be getting too specific for the master plan, but when you talk about targeted projects, like how does that work? Who leads that effort? Because I'm thinking of there are properties that come up in conversation frequently, right? 8 Pine Street, 88 and 90 to 92 Worcester Street, the intersection of North Main Street and Route 30, right? Like these things come up, but our board is sort of reactionary to things that are happening, when people apply for things or what have you. Like how do we coordinate around getting like this is in the short term, these are places where you really want to put some effort into, attracting someone or partnering with someone who's really gonna come through to develop. And there are also instances like the Grafton Inn, right, where it's owned by someone who's currently not doing anything with it. It's a historic building. Can we rally around getting the right owner or tenant in there to preserve the historic building and make it a place of business that people can use, right? And it's a quirky thing because it's a protected building that's 200 plus years old. So not everybody, if somebody's just thinking about making money, they're not going to buy it, right? So I guess that's all I have for economic development is like, I think we need to be more specific about the mixed use, and then how does the targeted list come together so we can actually act on it, and whether it's our board plus others or the select board, rally around it.
I'll just throw in on that, particularly on that question about the, how do we actually make some of this stuff happen? And a number of the action items in this master plan are aimed in that direction as to let's number one, look at what has happened and how it's not turned out the way we want, but at least as important is take a good look at the areas that we're thinking about and really try to understand what the potential are, what actually can happen, what incentives might the town offer. So there's a substantial amount of the action items in this are aimed in the direction of trying to solve that. Because I think we all recognize that some of these things on our wish list that they haven't actually happened yet, and maybe we're not really sure how to actually make it happen. But that's a lot of what I see that we're trying to drive in the direction of studying this stuff talking to the right people, people who know how to make things happen or why things don't happen. But yeah, there's a lot to drill down there. It's, as Sarah said at the beginning, this is kind of aspirational. But I think we've identified in a number of the action items steps that we can take towards trying to realize some of these ideals. Any other comments from Fiona or anybody else on the board on economic development?
Yeah, just to reiterate, a lot of those are Greg's suggestions are really good, and I think that we can work on implementing those they seem more actionable, and like that's the next step for the master plan implementation committee to take. From what I'm hearing, I don't know if the board wants to. I think David just basically said that, but it's like very action orientated follow up work, particularly the zoning change for the mixed use and formalizing like a priority list of development areas. I mean, we do that to an extent now, but we could definitely be significantly
Like
better.
we're saying, we know what we'd like to see happen. We haven't figured out, we don't exactly know how we're gonna make it happen, but we need to dig into that.
Yeah, and I
Really,
think there's
our next step.
there's more than two categories, but two categories. Like one is you're generally trying to encourage something like affordable housing, so you can have something broad that you're doing. Something like the inn is like making a deal. Like you need to find parties to come into it, and that's very specific. So I think that's the question I have is like, all right, I kind of get what we're doing broadly. Is there an ability to come in and sort of say like these targeted, or the down on Worcester Street where the the gas station and all the flooding issues, it's like the property's undesirable, right? So is there a way to kind of, do we accommodate somebody to develop it, or do we get them to give it back to the town? I don't know what it is, but it's like these are really specific versus there's also the category of the broad encouragement. So I don't know. Anyway, but I hear what you're saying, and I think that's great.
I think those are great ideas.
Yeah, just my perspective overall is that I led the previous plan development, and my sense is that this one has been done quite a lot better, and I think it'll be more successful, and I'm happy with it. The process has been pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, at some point, we as a board are going to want to get into talking about how do we follow up on all this, and I've got a lot that I can think of to talk about with that, but we're not quite there yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's sort of get through what we've got here as a plan, and our next step, one of our next steps as a board is going to be to decide how we want to follow up on implementation. Anything else?
I think Greg had a few other comments. Did you want to?
I have a couple things on land use, but if anybody else has things that they want to bring up, that's great.
Yeah, we were sort of trying to go through by section, so Greg led us off with economic development. Is there anything else that any of us want to mention with that? If not,
I'll make one just very brief comment that despite what we would aspire to be in a location, if someone owns it and they don't want to sell, they don't want to do anything with the building, other than as long as they're paying taxes on what they have, they can leave it vacant. They can leave it with no any business, even if it's only its own business. They can choose to do that. It's probably not in their best interest in general, but they could.
Yep. Yeah, among the things that we talk about in some of the details here is exploring what the town can do, kind of exactly along those lines. What support can the town give? What encouragement? What incentives are possible? And again, we're sort of in the plan here. We're sort of saying, well, asking what can we do, and throwing out some sort of general ideas like incentives or grants or loans or other forms of support. But following up is where we start to dig into what can we actually do. But ultimately, it gets back to Justin's point. The town has no actual control over what the owner of private property chooses to do or not to do. We can try to influence them, but that's it.
But do we know exactly who has the charge and the authority to go out and do that sort of thing. Economic Development Committee, someone in the day staff.
That's gonna be part of what we try to work
I
out.
think
mean,
that's key.
Yeah,
And I think that has not been completely ignored over in the planning department. But, I think if there was actually, here's the entity that's supposed to be,
yeah. And that, one of the things that the implementation plan does, that the implementation matrix Sarah talked about, is that for every one of the action items, we're identifying, here's who we think should take charge of that. Now, following up on that, we may find that, say, for example, we think the Economic Development Commission would be a good place for some of these business-related things to start. We may find out that actually one of those tasks is maybe better done by the town administrator, just as a wild example. But so we start out with, and I'm not to diverge too much from the topic here, but I'm going back to my experience with the implementation plan for the open space and recreation plan just a few years ago, where we basically took the list of action items, and the plan itself did not do this. So there's one of our first things to do as the implementation committee, as we said, for each one of the action items, who do we think should be in charge of it? And we went back and forth with some of them. We said, we think you should be in charge. Do you agree with that? And most they said yes. Sometimes they said, actually, no, someone else should be. So the implementation matrix that Sarah mentioned basically has a start on that. Who we initially think should be in charge of each one of these 167 action items.
do we have that? No, or when does it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what my comments lay in that implementation matrix.
yeah, that's the implementation.
When you're looking at that and you're talking about the specific action items, and it goes back to Greg's point, which is, I think whoever's responsible, whichever the select board, the planning board, whoever is responsible for that particular action, is following up and prioritizing based on what's their responsibilities. Because you can't do everything. It's obviously an aspirational document, and to your comments at the beginning, I think there's been a tremendous amount of work done over the last 2.5 years on this, and I commend the working group on that. But I think that's the key, is that the implementation matrix and prioritizing those action items.
Yeah, so like I said, I did something similar with the open space and rec plan, so I've got some experience to draw upon in suggesting how we move forward with this. And again, I didn't want to. We probably don't want to dig down too deeply
Nope.
but we do all. We should all understand that this is where we have to go with this. Okay.
So are we as a planning board coming up with the implementation plan, or we're approving this matrix, or what?
The implementation matrix is approved, will be approved as part of the plan.
Okay.
And we need to understand, though, that the implementation matrix as presented is subject to change as we get into actual implementation, as we follow up. It's sort of our best guess, speaking as the people who develop the master plan, it's our best guess as to how to go about the implementation, or who should be responsible for it. But I think as we developed this, we understood that it tends to be fluid, to be responsive to circumstances, as we learn more, as circumstances change.
We, the board, would make those changes?
Well, that's possibly, or we create an implementation team that
The planning board creates.
the planning board could create an implementation team.
This gets done by the planning,
So
through the efforts of the planning board.
It starts with the planning board, and how we decide to move it forward. That's really, right now, at least, that responsibility is with us.
Okay, so that we don't have to have a perfect implementation plan tonight in order to approve this.
No, definitely not.
What more do we have? Are there people who want to have hearings?
I question if we'll ever have a perfect implementation plan.
There's no such thing. But anyway,
I don't
so,
think we'll ever have a perfect implementation plan.
yeah, other,
It's central to getting things done, though.
Yes.
Yeah. yeah, other comments on the master plan chapters?
Yeah, just a couple things on land use. And again, I think this is a really important, useful document. So I just hope, you know, I'm like, I want this to, you know, go over well at town meeting and everybody to get behind it. I get the approach of trying to have density in the village centers, but I also think that we got to work over time to be really intentional about how that happens. I'm also interested in, you have action 1.1.1, the transfer of development rights, because part of what I'm getting at is we have limited parcels in some of these villages, right?
Yeah.
And if somebody gets on a parcel and then they sit on it for years, you know, partly we can affect that on the planning board because we shouldn't be approving, you know, extension after a while. But, you know, I guess if we're going to advocate that somebody move on, you know, how does that, have you seen that work in terms of transferring the rights to develop, or, you know, the property itself, or have you seen other people use that as a tool to get things done when they're stagnant or just, it's just taking way too long?
This action item is an explore, which is our master plan way of saying we're not sold on this. And part of that is because it is pretty rare in this part of the country to do transfer of development rights all the time. It's usually a very specific case, and you would need to create a bylaw to make it happen. I haven't seen any examples of using it to incentivize development of a developer that's going slowly. I think it is more used to protect specific parts of land on the other side of it. If you want, can jump in if you have a perspective.
Yeah, I will, Mr. Chair. So TDR, there's some examples of it in Mass, but as Sarah said, it's more common in like the Midwest. And I know that Mike did research on this, and I know he's on, so I won't speak for him, but I will say, just from my discussions with him and my own research, it's usually to protect. It's a tool that's used to protect like open space by transferring the ability to develop to another area instead of taking up like green space.
This is my first time encountering the concept, so I didn't know if it was I have the rights and I'm transferring it to someone else, or you're saying you're transferring the rights away from
To a different place.
Yeah, I see.
The tricky part about that is it's sort of easy to conceive of, you know, here's a piece of land you would like to not get developed. So you can buy from the owner the rights to develop. So
Yeah.
But then you have to have someplace else that those rights go to. So typically, as a transaction, you say you might have parcel A here, which would like to develop more intensely. Parcel B, which would like to be protected. So the owner of parcel A buys the development rights from parcel B. So it's a concept I have. I'm skeptical about how well we could make it work here.
Yeah,
But-
that helps my understanding of what it is. I thought it was that if we're stuck on something, we could encourage the transferability of that. But I see it's used in a different way now. So thank you for that.
There was, back in the day, I looked at this, I don't know, probably before the last master plan, once I got onto the planning board. And I remember being told that it wasn't something you could do in Massachusetts. I imagine it might take some fancy dancing to do it, and on a one-off thing, not necessarily have a section of the bylaw that just has this thing that can be used anywhere. So, anyway, okay.
Like Sarah said, what's in the master plan is explore the concept, learn more about it, see if it has any applicability here, and it might not. Anything else, Greg?
I guess the last two things are the population for the population in housing, it shows like a 15% growth till 2050, but we've got enough units approved for like 10% growth in a couple of years. Like, how do we reconcile that? You know, if we build housing and put 700 or 800 units into the market in the next 3 years, then we're probably growing faster than 3,000 people between now and 2050, right? Like, how does that work?
Population projections are funny of like, is it chicken or egg? If you increase housing because your population is going to grow, will your population grow more? Or will it grow less? And there's a lot of different things at stake, and other planners in Massachusetts will tell you that central Massachusetts is declining in population by 2050. Others will say it's double what we projected. So it's certainly not a science. But the way that the transportation department of CMRPC comes up with these projections, and they use a more historic model to get to those projections. So they do not include things like housing or regional trends or state trends. For instance, it doesn't say when the Seaport District in Boston floods, how many people are going to come to Grafton, for example.
Yeah.
So it's kind of used as okay, is this something that you can expect? But you're right. The way that housing changes will absolutely change population. Part of that growth is what we were talking about, that aging population. So it's not necessarily people moving in, but it's just people living longer, which is great.
Okay.
Yeah, we seem to have a lot of people looking for housing, you know, even Grafton people looking for housing.
Yeah.
But yes, I sit in on the transportation committee's work with the projections and all of that, and
It's an art.
okay, that's the way it's being done. We all, I don't know. Yeah, Grafton is, my recollection is that Grafton, over the recent times, has been one of the more rapid growth areas. We really have had on the high side of the rate.
Yeah, I think we experienced quite a bit of growth, and I'm thinking more of growth in housing, and I really haven't, I think the population growth may be very roughly comparable, but between about 1985 and 2006 or 7 or so, we had a very high rate of housing growth. And it's dropped off. It dropped off remarkably with the 2008 recession, and the growth in housing has stayed at that low level ever since. Now, with some of the projects that are in the pipeline, so to speak, that is, some of them approved but no construction has yet begun, that could signal somewhat of an increase in housing production, but it may not.
Yeah.
So we don't really know even how to predict that. You know,
I'd like to see some of the numbers over those years, because I remember things, maybe not.
You know, I did again, not to digress too much, but I did a pretty detailed analysis of housing growth over the years. And like I said, the period from about 1985 to 2006 or 7 was a period of unusually rapid housing growth compared to both before and since.
The late 80s, there was a downturn when my early time on the board, economy went down and things weren't happening very well. Then things picked up in the 90s. But, you know, we talk about hundreds now. I don't ever remember hundreds in any subdivision back then. I remember when I came on the board, I remember local contractors, Frank Knoll, building a house at a time on, 20 or 30.
Oakmont Farms was one of the larger, more rapidly developed subdivisions. I don't know. I don't remember.
Anyway,
off
I'd
the
be
top of my head,
interested to.
But yeah, we could spend a lot of time digging up and discussing those numbers, but we should really be focused on the master plan. Any other comments, questions, suggestions from the board?
Yeah, I have just two things that are very high level and not really going to be something we change, I believe. But first off, in the non-chapter elements thing, there's some figures relating to family income of Grafton in 2021 and survey responders. It's a little confusing in terms of presentation of data where the columns of each section are different numbers, where the 22.60 in the figure 3 estimated combined income of survey responders is 220,000 or more, whereas the similar entry in the combined family income of Grafton in 2021 is 200,000 or more. We're not going to be able to correct that without doing a survey, that kind of thing, but it's just the apples to oranges in a way. So it's just interesting and noteworthy. The only other comment I have is it seems a lot of the imagery we have in here is well known to us, and it'll probably still be well known in 5 to 10 years. But if this goes at 25 years, hopefully not, like the last one did. Some of these may be like, where was that? For the image of Tufts from the drone, if Tufts changes drastically in its presentation or different events that have happened in Grafton, things that we've taken pictures of don't have any notes or footnotes in anything here in the master plan to say what they were. That was just something I noticed that I don't think we're gonna go through all of them and change it at this point, but that's just a note I noticed.
Yeah, thank you.
For the record, for the board's information, the documents you may have reviewed that were uploaded on Friday, I had reviewed those over the weekend and I came up with about 3 dozen nitpicky things. So there's going to be at least that update to what you all reviewed. Punctuation, spelling, hyphenation, a word missing here or there. Nothing that affects the substance, but there is going to be that revision. The implementation matrix that you might have downloaded and looked at from Friday, I have an update for that. Again, it's just cleaning things for consistency with the action, with the chapters of the master plan and some other details. But other than that, what you reviewed is basically what the board is being asked to consider approving.
Not sure whether I want to stir up a question. Some places, I understand, can have requirements for compliance with the master plan. Maybe Connecticut does that. Well, one of the states around, not too far from us, has that.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Megan Dupree was where I heard that. And she's back to Rhode Island after she was here. That's one of the things I remember. I think there was also funding for master planning down there. But I'm just interested in the possibility, the status of that in Massachusetts.
I think we see it more countrywide when there's a water shortage, like a severe water shortage. I'd say I stand by this document with my whole chest. I wouldn't recommend that the planning board does that move, personally. I think it might be a little restricting if the plan does go out of date or if the state has new incentives for new types of development that might even be smarter than what we came up with. But it's not up to me. That would be my recommendation. But for the state side, I don't see that happening. You think so?
My only other comment would be on the funding side, the funding side as well. Obviously, the comment that you made about for the planning department, making sure that they had the proper resources to be able to administer this. I think there has to be something in that implementation matrix that relates to, a focused effort on making sure that the funding is focused on.
Yeah, part of what you see in the implementation matrix under the resources column here, there's potential funding sources. You see a cost estimate, it gives at least a guess as to what this particular action item. Of course, if you added those up, you'd have a number that we could only ever dream about actually funding.
Right. And
It's-
you know, because one of the ones that was specific that I noticed was the communications director.
Yeah.
And, you know, is that something that's, the town is actually looking to hire that particular position? You know, those are the kinds of things that, you know, I think need to be ironed out as well.
Yes, and I think that all gets us into the implementation phase where here's all these great ideas. And how do we make any of this happen? and yeah, we certainly don't have the answers to that tonight, but at least, we sort of begin to get a grip on it by having an idea of what the actions are, what we think ought to be done, who should be in charge of it, how urgent it is, what's a priority, is it something we want to do tomorrow or 10 years from now? What are the potential costs? What are potential sources of funding? So when we've gathered up an initial, sort of an initial estimate of all that, and now our mission, should we decide to accept it, is to go forward and see what we can do about making it happen. And yeah, there's like no end of questions that come up when you start thinking about that. But again, I can talk a lot about implementation, partly from as I said, my recent experience with trying to, get into some implementation on the open space and rec plan, which kind of coordinates with some of this.
Yeah.
A number of our action items here in the implementation matrix correspond to open space and recreation plan action items. Some of them correspond to housing production plan recommendations. So that's another aspect of coordination that we have to keep in mind. This plan doesn't sort of sit entirely in isolation. We've got some other activities going on that need to coordinate with this. I don't want to go off the deep end on that tonight, though, even though I could.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that the planning board votes to approve the comprehensive master plan and implementation matrix. I didn't hear any substantive recommended changes, but I will include the changes from Mr. Robbins about the grammatical and related comments.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded that the board officially approve the draft master plan and implementation matrix. Any discussion on the motion?
So the implementation matrix is flexible in terms of
Yes.
after this approval, we'll be manipulating that to get to the real action steps. Really?
Yes, this is, essentially it's our initial guess as
Yeah.
to what it could be, but yeah, no way could we seriously consider it to be like frozen in time or content.
All right, yeah, because I mean, as you heard, most of my things are about the implementation. So with that, I support it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none.
I just like, if we can't require compliance, or it's not a good idea to require compliance, maybe we should think about doing something to say we wanna put the board's evaluations of projects into their decisions, whether they're good or bad, just to highlight looking at the master plan.
Yeah, I think that's easily, I would understand that as part of the implementation going forward. Because one of the problems.
Put it in. Move the question.
Just to finish my thought, one of the problems with a plan like this is you can write this you can write up all these action items, you can assign the action items to different committees and boards, but how do you make them do what you think they should do? And bottom line, you really can't make them do much of anything, but you can explore various forms of incentives and various forms of working with the other bodies to get some assurance that they're going to take this seriously and actually do it. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. The plan is approved. The other question before us is whether we send this to, or consider for sending it to a town meeting for a vote. The understanding that the vote would be non-binding, because now that we've adopted the plan, it's official. Just-
My only question is if we do bring it to town meeting and there's comments and it's denied at town meeting, what space do we have to try to address what town meeting was not in favor of to make any potential changes and bring it back again?
Yeah.
Planning boards make master plans. It seems to me that planning boards can change master plans.
Yep, that,
We are not prohibited from updating the master plan next week,
More often than every 20 years.
more often than every 20 years, for sure.
that's as I thought.
Right. There are no specific time limits or constraints on that, so, yes, absolutely, if next week something comes to our attention that screams for a change in the master plan, that's within our power to do that.
My other related question is there any, does this board feel, well, I think this is the root of the question anyway, does this board feel there's any actual benefit to having town meeting vote on it?
I do. I do. I think for the transparency and the awareness for people to have it to be shared with them formally and have them come in, and I know it's a small percentage of the town that goes to town meeting, but I think the process of putting it out there, again, I'm, about a year into being involved in municipal government, right? What you learn when you actually get involved in it is that there's lots of opportunities to get the information. There's lots of opportunities to get engaged, and a lot of people sometimes show up too late, right? But that doesn't mean we don't stop putting it out there, right? Or that doesn't mean that if there is a strong contingent of a certain comment about the master plan, or if we're not communicating it clearly enough, right? I think it's on us to put it out there, and the intentions in this I think are solid. So if we can communicate it clearly, at least people have had the chance to look at it, and then if down the road people are asking questions about something, we can point back to the moment when it was shared with the town in a very formal way. So that's how I feel.
Bob?
Yeah, well, I wanted to do that the last time, and it wasn't gonna happen. The staff and consultants and whatnot, just got it done finally. I thought, but I still thought, if town meeting has approved it, then you have a lot, it seems to me like you have a lot more when you say things should happen thus and so. But didn't I just see a comment from someone
Yes.
that pointed out that it's a little risky? It's still a plan and it's still there, even if town meeting doesn't approve it. But if town meeting doesn't approve it, that's a problem.
Yeah. Let me suggest that we're not up against a deadline today to submit this for a town meeting vote. So that is something that we might want to take under advisement. Clearly, there will be a deadline for the town meeting warrant, for the fall town meeting warrant. We will want to decide yea or nay on that by that, no later than that deadline. But I don't see, given that there are some arguments pro and con, I tend to like the idea of giving town meeting an opportunity to say, yeah, we like this, or worst case, no, we don't like it. Even if town meeting does not vote on the master plan itself, some of the more important master plan actions will wind up on town meeting floor as votes to change the zoning bylaw, at which time, obviously, town meeting will get a chance to weigh in. And so on some of the things that might be more controversial, sooner or later, town meeting is going to be voting on it. But
I agree. That's another benefit, right? So the feedback that comes at town meeting broadly can help guide, right? What are the things that people are concerned about and how do you address them in the bylaw for the next town or whatever town meeting you bring the bylaw to, so that people can really understand the intention of the bylaw and we can alleviate the concerns that get voiced at another time, right? It just gives us a better chance to.
Yeah, so a member of the master plan working group has his hand raised on Zoom. Brian?
Yes, thank you very much. I just have a couple of comments. Number one is, we put it out there for public comment already. They've had their opportunity to comment on it. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't be able to comment on it, but I don't see why we would have to take a vote at town meeting. We can give a presentation, a short presentation of what the plan is. And if people have comments to make or they wanted to add something to it, they certainly can make a recommendation at that time. Like you said, it's only the planning board that can go back in and make the changes. So I don't see a real need to have to take a vote at town meeting, but you can still present the plan and have people make comments if they want to, or questions. That's my point.
My thing is that what I've seen or felt around the town over all my time was, at this point, this is the opinion of 5 people. Now, they were elected, but it's just 5 people against 20,000. If you go to town meeting, you have a much broader base that makes respect of the planning, of the master plan, I think, more sellable or supported. People will more easily support it. So, putting it off a bit, putting off this decision a little bit might be good, so I might move to table it. You can take it from the table when the time comes. Oh.
Yeah. Anne Marie's officially part of this meeting, is the master plan working group.
Anne Marie Foley, 45 South Street. For me, I get a lot of feedback from residents in terms of trying to get information out. Right, and actually, your last open house that we did at the library, that's kind of all we heard, right? So any opportunity to bring this to a broader audience, even though folks in this room are so immersed in it and think, how could people not know about this? If you reach another 170 people at town meeting with presenting this or having it in their hands, I think that there is certainly benefit to that. And I wouldn't be nervous of the town voting this down, to be honest with you, given the 2.5 years of work that went into this, and even all of your eyes looking at it and seeing the broader, strokes that it presents. So I would certainly be in favor of bringing this to town meeting, and again, just another opportunity to share this with a broader audience. And to your point, Bob, I think that with a positive vote there, then we can look back and say, yep, we talked about this here. Maybe you weren't there that night, but here's what happened. So for those, couple of reasons, and certainly agreeing with what Greg said as well. So,
The thing is that I remember way back, and I remember as recently as the last town meeting, one person gets up and raises a fuss, and something that should have flown through dies. Can you think of one in the last town meeting or so?
Understood. However, we've already
that's a danger.
Sure.
That's so hard to.
But we've discussed here that you're making the vote. This is a planning board vote, and you have voted in the affirmative. So the town meeting isn't going to be able to vote it down entirely. It might just be that, to someone else's point, is that maybe there's something in one area, and you were going to hear about that anyways, because when you came to do that bylaw zoning change or what have you, in 2 years, those people are going to rise up as well. So I don't think it can be voted down per se.
Well, they can say they don't want to approve it. I mean, that's what they'll say. In any case, I'm moving to just push it back and think about it, and when the time comes, or between now and when the time comes,
I will second that table.
Moved and seconded that we defer further of discussion of the question of putting the master plan to a town meeting vote. The discussion of the motion. Brian?
I don't understand the motion. Could you explain it to me, please?
The motion is just for the planning board to not decide tonight whether to put this up for a town meeting vote. That the planning board will pick up this discussion at another time prior to the deadline for the fall town meeting warrant.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. I think we've spent more time on all of this than I thought we would. With no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, motion carried unanimously. That concludes the planning board's business on the master plan. I'm going to switch my hats for just a moment as the chair of the master plan working group. The master plan working group has one action item, which is to approve the minutes of last week's master plan working group meeting.
So moved.
I heard a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded that the master plan working group approve the minutes of the June 16th, 2025 meeting. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote by roll call. Bob Carroll?
Bob Carroll's aye.
Victoria?
Aye.
Anne Marie?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Chantel?
Aye.
Dave votes aye. Sue would vote, but she's been blocked from rejoining the meeting. Somehow she got blocked from rejoining. So,
I don't know what.
anyway, motion is carried unanimously by all members of the working group present. And now a motion to adjourn the working group would be in order.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Moved and seconded. The working group meeting be adjourned. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Ms. Duckworth.
Aye.
Ms. Foley.
Aye.
Ms. George.
Aye.
Mr. Houle.
Aye.
Ms. Kimball.
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. The master plan working group is adjourned. And I don't believe there is another meeting of the master plan working group planned.
That's it.
So I would like to thank all the present and former members of the master plan working group for all the time they've put in. We've spent 2 years on this, and I think we got a good result.
Nice work. Very nice.
So thank you again. And thank you, Sarah and staff, for all the work you put in, Fiona and staff. And I get to hang up one of my hats now.
Wait till implementation.
We'll talk
We're
about
talking
implementation some other time. I suspect maybe I'll have something to say about that.
I suspect you.
Okay. Again, thank you all. And now we can get on with the rest of our planning board meeting. So, to begin our regular sort of planning board meeting agenda, I will ask for public input. If anybody has a matter that they would like to bring to the attention of the planning board that is not already on the agenda for this evening's meeting, now would be the time to raise your hand. Seeing none. We move on to the action item agenda. The first action item listed here is board reorganization. It's been suggested to me that we might want to defer that until we get all of our other work taken care of.
Yes.
Agreed.
I'd like to at least give our public hearing done before that.
Yeah, so let's defer board reorganization until after the other business is taken care of. Our next action item is an approval not required plan at 29 and 1/2 Deer Gnome Street. This looks very straightforward to me. Fiona, can you quickly walk us through this?
Sure. So, the applicant is Mr. Michael LeMay. He is proposing to create parcel A, and I'll pull it up in a minute. Create parcel A and add said parcel A to lot 2R, which is on the, and that will create a parcel B. So it's creating two parcels and swapping land essentially. So let me just pull up the plan for a moment. Kind of hard to show you all when, kind of hard to physically talk about it. And so,
It's a lot easier to show it on a picture than it is to describe it.
yes, thank you. The words are not coming to me today. So they are creating parcel A here, and then a parcel B here, and swapping with their neighbor. So, yep. So, and then the new lot line for the home at number 29 will be, well, if you just follow my cursor along here, it will look like that. And then the other remaining property, which is lot 2R indicated on this plan, will have a lot line. If you want to follow my cursor again, here we go, up along there, that way. So it's a swap to get some additional area. And one thing that I will note for the board is that you might notice right away that there's a reduced frontage here for lot 29.5 Deer Gnome. They received a variance many years ago for that reduced frontage, and that was it wasn't originally indicated on the plan set, and we just had the applicant go back and make that adjustment so that it's it's codified when it's recorded. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions that the board may have. You can see here all of the the associated details are provided. If there's wetlands, well, status of the street, abutters, etc. So, and then the references are here.
I will move that the board find approval is not required and direct staff to handle the appropriate documentation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Declared motion carried unanimously. We'll move on to our next action item, which is another A&R plan. This one at 63 North Street.
So, let me pull it up. Also a pretty simple plan here. So the applicant is the owner, currently living on what's indicated on this plan as lot 1, 63 North Street. The parcel is quite large, and he's subdividing the parcel into, he's creating this parcel B, which will not be a building lot going forward, which is indicated accordingly. They don't meet, they won't meet frontage requirements once this is subdivided. Some plan details are there. We did go in a little bit of a back and forth about adding some additional details just for future reference, but didn't really have any glaring issues with this plan. It's pretty straightforward, subdividing the lot and creating a non-buildable parcel, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And there's a lot of detail in the plan notes, which is helpful.
What's the purpose of the split if it's not a buildable lot?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if the applicant is here and wants to speak to that. You want to come to the podium? Just name and address, please.
David Nigro, where I live, my address. Yeah, 136 Gore Road, Webster.
And he's just
Answer the question on.
yeah.
Yeah, no plans at this time. Just making the conforming lot.
Making 63.
Yeah, 63 right now.
Yeah, basically, you're reducing the size of
Yeah,
lot
to a
at
conforming.
63.
Yeah, to the conforming. Minimum conforming lot.
But it costs something to do this. You have a plan and whatnot and application. And it just sort of curious, you plan to, you consider the possibility of asking for a waiver, ZBA?
No plans at this time. Just gonna break it off.
Okay, well,
You have one lot and you're splitting it into two. The second lot, which you don't live on, or won't be living on, or whatever. The second lot has no currently no intended use,
Correct.
and it, there is no conforming use that can sit on there without a variance, but that's,
Right.
Well,
There's no requirement
I
of
don't know
us
whether
to,
that's true, but yeah, no, you can't build a house there right now. But yeah, okay, go
and,
for it.
and there's no requirement for us to understand what a potential future use is, as long as the,
right, provided the A and R complies with the rules,
yes.
Yes.
and the rules don't involve a future intentions for the use of
No,
the
no,
lot.
no, no.
Right.
No, but we see something. No, what?
It's interesting.
You can ask the
Most-
question.
Most of the time, the explanation for why we're doing the A and R is pretty straightforward, like the previous one, they're just shifting the back lot lines. Or they're creating another lot so that somebody can build, but, yeah, every once in a while, there's just about it. The lot's being split and we don't really know why. And as long as it meets the requirements of the law, we can't exactly deny it.
Let's do it.
So I will move, approval is not required, and staff to appropriate documentation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Fiona will take care of the documentation for you.
I'll let you know. We'll contact
Okay,
you.
so I can leave now. Yeah.
You can leave now.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So our next action item is the draft decision for the request for special permit and site plan approval at 53 Browns Road, which is for keeping of livestock on a parcel of less than 5 acres.
And for this one, it's just us four.
Yes, as this is a special permit, requires a votes, four votes in favor. Our new member, which I neglected at the beginning of the meeting to welcome you, Mike, to the,
Okay, thank you very much.
to the
Good to
board.
be here.
My apologies for not remembering to do that right off the bat. But yes, officially welcome you to the board.
Thanks very much.
And as I was starting to say, the board that reviewed this 2 weeks ago consisted of the 4 of us plus our associate member, Mr. Mead, who informed me just yesterday that he would not be able to attend the meeting this evening. So we have 4 members eligible to vote on this special permit. So the draft decision, if you've reviewed it, if you have any questions or comments about it, it's really pretty ordinary for a special permit of this kind.
I mean,
Any comments, Fiona?
yeah, I'll just add, made sure to incorporate the commentary that was heard during the public hearing regarding being cognizant of keeping waste out of the septic and well areas. Also, we have a standard. These conditions are pretty standard in any livestock permit that we've issued, but just so the board is aware that we kind of covered all the general bases. Waste can't be stored in not a non-porous container, so that doesn't leak into the groundwater. It's pretty straightforward things like that. I did make a point to say something specifically about the roosters because it seemed to be a bit of a discussion about the roosters specifically, because obviously they can be quite loud, and I know that the applicant expressed experience with being able to rehome them, and she did agree to that and spoke in detail about that at the last hearing. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have, but I think that's pretty much it. I would think.
And when I read through the decision, it looked to me like it covered all the bases from the discussion we had 2 weeks ago. So nothing to suggest adding or changing.
Mr. Chair, I will just say there was one other thought. The permit runs with the owner and it doesn't run with the land. That was brought up by Bob specifically at the last meeting. That's pretty standard, but that's in there too. So.
And the numbers of animals, I think we had, had that, didn't, we were talking about 2 horses or 1,
Yes.
I think that was captured.
So I have it listed as 2 horses or 1 horse and 1 to 2 goats plus backyard chickens.
Yep.
I move to grant the special permit, find favorably on all findings as listed, and approve requested waivers, the conditions, and draft decision as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Suppose I should formally take this as a roll call vote. Justin?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Dave votes aye. Motion carried by a vote of 4 in favor, none against. All of those eligible to vote have voted.
So I'll follow up tomorrow with the paperwork. I'll just get this edited and turn into the town clerk and contact you when it's ready.
Yep, so this will have the usual 20-day appeal period.
Yes.
All right, one more action item
Thank you.
to take up now, and that is another draft decision, this one at 119 Pleasant Street for the common driveway expansion, such as it is or was. This is another very straightforward thing. When I looked at the draft decision, I thought it covered all the bases.
Yes. I'm happy to answer any questions, but
I make the same exact motion.
Second.
Same exact motion, same exact second. All right, discussion of the motion. Hearing none. Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Delamole.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried by a vote of 4 in favor and none against of all those eligible to vote.
Should we do the public hearing?
I think maybe we would like to get the public hearing done. We have a few other miscellaneous items, but let's go with the public hearing, which is a continuation of the hearing from 2 weeks ago on the special permit site plan approval for marijuana establishment at 135 West Hill Road. My recollection is we were looking for additional information, parking calculations, and making sure we're clear on what part of the building is covered,
yes. Sorry.
and any other matters that I don't remember off the top of my head.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair, so where the board left off with this was basically wanting to get a confirmation of the adequacy of the site in terms of the required number of parking spaces and the site circulation and flow, and making sure that every business is properly accommodated for. I did go, I was in a back and forth with the applicant a bit, and some of that, that correspondence is uploaded into the record, just requesting additional information to make sure that we're accounting for everything that's going on this site, including the businesses that are actually in the building as well as the food truck. With that being said, I did have, I wanted it classified on the plan that the food truck is, for purposes of this, a restaurant. It's on wheels, and I understand that, but it is, after confirming with the applicant, the truck picks up supplies, comes back and sets up and operates out of the truck during the day there as a restaurant would. So we need to understand how many spaces the truck is parked in and takes away versus how many spaces need to be provided per the zoning bylaw. So, it's kind of a funky situation with the food truck. And then obviously there's other factors that are at play here, because there's a few different permitting entities that this kind of is affected. So the select board issues the common vic license for the food truck as well as food truck permits, and they have their own requirements in their permit, which I will invite the applicant, who I know is on, to just elaborate on some of the information there, so we can, the board rather, can make a decision and be comfortable with this plan. But that was mainly the concern at the last meeting, was the required number of parking. There is parking in reserve, and the applicant does have, based on the calculations, enough parking spaces. I think there's an additional, don't hold me to it, I think there was at least an additional 10 spaces. So, there was some you know, I think that the board might want to ask a couple of questions about the operation of the site and just kind of figure out what's going on before they, you know, they make a decision. So I'll turn it over either to the, you know, back to you, or I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
Any questions from the
So-
board?
Mostly for Fiona, from reading the correspondence and these updates since our last meeting. I thought I read something about picnic tables basically being set up for the food truck.
Right.
That would presumably take up more than just 2 spots the food truck itself is taking up. But if we don't have any record of that on the plan for like where those might be set up or how many parking spots they would take up. But if I'm hearing you correctly, we do have 10 extra spots, roughly, you know, give or take.
Right, give or take.
You know, that 10 extra spots, that would be, that would be in theory. The amount of picnic tables we probably set up would not reduce, be lower than the limit, but. So.
Right. Yeah.
If you look at the picture, I believe that they're in that spot where the excess pavement is, in that far back left-hand corner. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
What about?
Yeah, yes, that is correct. Those picnic tables that have been actually moved completely off the parking lot were set up in that excess pavement area. They were not in any parking spots.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Colonel, sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may
Yeah.
confirm. So, Colonel, it's this top back corner where my cursor is floating, right? And then this center median area is where the benches will be? Or are?
You need a bigger
Well,
curb.
no, they're not there. They were put there without my approval by the tenants, and they were moved off the property. They're right now. They're just against my shed, out of the way. They're not on the site. There's no impact on the site from that. If they want to go and get food, if the food truck wants to go and do the picnic tables, they would do that separately on their own. They would come to you guys and do that separately.
Okay.
Just as long as it's understood that there cannot be any obstruction of the spaces that you have for that reason. So.
Correct. Yes.
You had something, Bob?
Just that there's been, Fiona had some email over the weekend, that she said we'd get to tonight.
So just, and I did speak to the applicant about this. He came by the window earlier, just clarifying for the board where the establishment is at the moment, just considering the banner and such, because it was, the board was, some members had driven by and seen the banner anyway, as well as myself, so I just want to confirm and get on the record that you're not officially open.
Correct. That banner's been moved around. There's multiple banners and flags on site that we've been moving around over the last few days. One of the locations that we proposed putting it up caused an issue with parking, and so the building inspector came and we discussed that we're just putting it up temporarily. We're moving signs all around the buildings. All the tenants are doing the same thing.
But I don't know that I've seen the banner. There was a question about when, I thought there was a question about when you will be open versus when you have the permits.
Right. We're planning mid-July at this point, depending on labor resources.
Okay.
And is that for just the retail or the manufacturing as well?
So the manufacturing, we are putting that on pause due to just some financial resource issues. So even though we're adding it, we're not going to use it right away. Some of the equipment that we had purchased originally came from overseas, and we are not able to right now financially pay the additional fees required to bring that stuff over. So we're kind of stuck for a little bit with that one.
And Bob, I think you mentioned something at the last meeting that I reviewed. you were asking questions about the operations in the basement.
Yeah, and and I don't know where exactly the manufacturing, that we're speaking of would be. Is it in the main floor, or is that to use the space downstairs? And,
No, so just to clarify, marijuana manufacturing simply means buying bulk cannabis flower and packaging it. So we're required to get what's called a manufacturing license to just do packaging. We're not actually producing any products from scratch. So that's where there's a little bit of a miscommunication. So we're allowed to do that repackaging right in the retail office area or anywhere on the back of anywhere in the retail space other than the sales floor. So it really is wherever we, set up a scale and bring out the bulk pounds and we repackage it into a smaller Mylar bag container.
yeah,
It allows us to be able to buy product at a lower cost per gram if we repackage it ourselves. That's the sole purpose. So this is really for our financial viability of the business. We need to be able to do this so that we can get better pricing on our wholesale goods.
yeah, I'm just concerned if more use is added, like by doing something in that basement, whether the parking remains adequate. And
We're only breaking down bulk flower, and it is our retail employees that are doing this.
no, I understand that now, but I'm looking going forward. I don't know whether whether the town would know that you had moved something into the basement. So I'm just trying to cover that base.
Like what would you move? What do you mean?
I think to Bob's point, I think the concern is our parking calculations are based in part on square footage of use area for some of these uses, and if some of that use goes to the basement, that increases the square footage and increases the parking calculation requirements. I think we might be able to, Fiona, correct me if I'm wrong, condition this to say this is only for this amount of square footage for the retail area as depicted on the plans, and not anything in the basement.
Yeah, we could do that. We're going to be very, very limited in our staffing as it is, just because, it's a tough financial time at the moment. So if you want to include a condition that if I were to hire more people, if the business is doing well and we're hiring more people, I would have no problem coming back to the board and asking for any additional changes you would require from me. I hope I'm in that position. I hope we're busy, and I hope we do have to expand and do more things.
I just want a condition that says you're not gonna have any business activity, whatever, in the basement without further review.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's not a problem.
okay, and I think Fiona caught it.
Yes, I got it.
Okay. I'm happy.
Thank you.
Anything else?
The purely perfunctories, I guess is the word. These multiple plan revisions that have gone on our site for this current application, I noticed that none of them have a newer date assigned. They have the land planning of March 1st, 2022 date stamp, which might matter. I don't know how you as a planning department feels about that, but that's a thing I noticed.
And we would, prefer that.
I'd be happy if that's if you feel that's needed, if it's a condition, I'm happy with it to have an updated plan just with the right date.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would expect a plan to have its latest revision date on the plan.
Yes.
Right.
That's, I kind of thought that was kind of customary.
Agreed, but
No.
notice.
It's a absolute necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said,
First thing I learned was title blocks.
Yep. Yeah, I would have expected it to be customary for an engineer to put for someone who draws up a plan, every time they revise the plan, to put that revision date on the plan.
Well, everywhere I've worked, where I had to draw plans,
Yep.
you wanted that so that you could tell which one you
Yeah,
had.
you wanna know what version you're looking at?
Yeah, there might even be laws about that when it comes to this sort of thing.
So now that you've gotten confirmation, the food truck does not leave during the day. It actually stays on property and operates out of there.
From-
Is that in fact correct?
It does leave during the day. It leaves in the morning for several hours. It comes back for their work hours during the day, and then it moves and is stored in the back of the building some nights or off-site. It does leave each day though. They have a separate kitchen that they use. They have like a community kitchen of some sort.
But does it operate out of the parking lot, or does it operate out of somewhere else in Worcester or some other location during the day?
During the day, like for example, this weekend, they're going to be at a party of some sort. Like they go out to other locations where they essentially booked as caterers.
So, Mr. Booth, correct me if I'm wrong, but from the documents I read, it seems like it typically will go out early in the morning to stock up and get its materials, sell from somewhere outside of Grafton, and then return to Grafton to continue to sell its remaining stock and inventory in Grafton in your lot.
Yes, they do both. So they sell. They'll be gone for full days outside of Grafton. So it's not every day they come back, but they do sell off site. They do sell on site, and they have a community kitchen that they use for their cooking and prep.
So probably the key point here is that the food truck does sell food on this site at times.
I would.
Yes, it does.
I sort of imagine they're out there selling lunch at some, construction site or, whatever, a park or something. And then when that's done, they come back and.
They come back, and if they have the opportunity to do so, they'll come back and sell food out of this lot here.
Yeah.
And I
Have
think they're-
we beaten this enough?
I think so.
I think, Fiona?
Yeah, I just want to make a point too, while we're discussing that, that the placement of that food truck, it really is very critical that patrons are able to get in and out unobstructed to the businesses on either side. I did have a little bit of concern when I was driving by the location. At one point it was in a handicap spot, and I know that things were moving around, and I know that you've said that, but I just want to be very clear, and I just want it stated in the record that the truck really needs to be in the locations that the select board designated it to be in, and it cannot be kind of preventing people from using, ramps or stairs, and that goes to the banner as well. We just want this lot to be functioning efficiently for everybody on this site and making sure that things are just where they're supposed to be. So I just want to make that, clear. We want to make sure that the pizza place on one side and Pecorino's on the other are able to do what they need to do as well while this is being figured out. I know that it's been challenging to get business off the ground lately, and just bearing that in mind, we do need to be cognizant of making sure that we're enforcing the right thing here. So,
And I would imagine at no point should the food truck be allowed to park in a handicap.
yes.
That should go without saying, but
The food truck was not parked in a handicap spot. The food truck, 1 foot of the food truck was in the striped lines next to a handicap spot, and one of the tenants called the building department. The building department head came out 3 separate times to check, and they moved the truck. They were trying their best to get it into the spot properly, and we explained that on the 3 times that the building inspector came on site, and they have since moved it into a good parking spot. It was parked in that spot for maybe 3 hours at most.
Yeah, I've known people that have gotten tickets for parking in the handicap spot if they were partially in those lines, even for 10 minutes. So, it's a thing to just be aware of. And I know you can't control.
It's tough. Like these attendants, I can't be held responsible for every single thing they do every minute.
Oh, no,
They identified a problem, and then like I said, the building inspector came out 3 separate times to check on this while they were trying to move the spot over and over and over again. So once it was identified, once it was complained about and identified, they were making an effort to get it to the right spot. They were just having issues turning into that spot and ended up going to a different spot in the parking lot.
I don't think I've understood why there were problems that they were only able to solve initially in handicap slots. But I think that if they're in a handicap slot, I think that somebody else, the police department, gets called and they issue a ticket.
Yep.
That's the way I've heard it. I've never had to call, but, I know there's a rule.
And not to belabor any points here, but as I recall, when we updated the town bylaws a couple years ago, that particular point was covered by the bylaw revision, that the police specifically are authorized to ticket that in that situation.
Yep.
So that's really,
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah, my point
I
being,
agree. I feel like that's what should have happened, not the building inspector spending a very significant amount of time on the property in regards to the truck being parked in a spot like that. If it should have been a ticketable offense, they should have gotten a ticket or at least warning, and they would have moved. It wouldn't have become a large situation like it did.
Anyway, what we see on the screen in the plan in front of us is the food truck location on the left hand, the western side of the building.
Yep.
And that's what this permit will authorize.
Do we have to authorize a specific parking slot? I don't see why,
I don't think you can.
No.
but that's fine. Leave it, just leave it.
Used when someone if the truck's gone and someone pulls in, it can't come back in that same spot that it vacated.
Yeah.
It just needs to be in the general area, but also the select board has their own requirement in the common vic license too.
Yeah,
So
so
if we're doing, conditioning something that's contradictory to what they're saying, we'll just reference it in the condition.
Right, the select board license governs
A bunch of that.
where the truck is allowed to operate and park. Is there anything else that we need to hear on this?
I hope not.
I think we've received all the information that the board needs.
Agreed.
Is there any public comment? I move we close the hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the public hearing be closed. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously. And a motion to direct staff to draft a decision might be in order.
Sounds good.
With all the-
If anybody would care to make
With
that.
with all the qualifiers in there, please, Fiona.
Technically, we don't need a motion, but sure, I'll make it. I move we direct staff to draft a decision.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously. So the draft decision should be available for the board to deliberate on at the board's next meeting,
Yes.
assuming staff has the hours to get that done. You know, staff is not sitting by idly these days or any days.
No.
Okay, so that public hearing is done. Would you guys like to now, there may be, there's quick action, bills. I think we have some bills. that
Move we authorize payment of the bills.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously. Any other actions that we need to take while are we ready to revisit the action item on board reorganization?
Yes.
To begin with, we need to elect a chair, vice chair, and clerk. I'll start with chair. Any nominations for chair?
I'd welcome being it, but I'll also nominate Bob.
Did you say also?
I'd welcome being the chair, but I'm not going to nominate myself, so I will nominate Bob.
We gotta have as many nominations. There are two ways of doing this, and I like having the nominations and then votes.
That's the easiest way.
Yeah, that's the best way.
I think I can do it. I think I know how to do it. But I'm perfectly happy for someone else to do it.
Yes. Not that it's needs to dictate our decisions here, but we've typically been rotating through the chairs. I'm this year. Bob, you were chair last year.
I think so.
I think you were the previous chair,
Yes.
He was.
and it was Justin before that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll second Bob as a nomination if that's what's.
So I've heard so far one person nominated to be chair. Are there any other nominations for chair? Hearing none. There being just one nomination, we'll put it up to a vote. All those in favor of Bob as chair, say aye.
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 Opposed? Declare that motion carried unanimously. Bob gets to be chair. I can either turn the chair over right this minute,
I'll let you, do
or I
this
can
process.
finish out this meeting.
Yes.
I think we've done it both ways at various times, but, okay.
I make one up every time.
So, nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Justin.
I'd accept that.
Second.
All right, now Justin is nominated and second. Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, let's put that to a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously. The nomination. Justin, you are now about to be officially our vice chair. And clerk. The position of clerk has generally gone to the newest member of the board.
It's not a requirement.
Always, but that
Well, I remember when I came to the board, they said, I looked like I should be the representative to CMRPC. And someone else got clerk. But,
Oh,
that, you know, the, what it was, the newest man on board or whatever it is the rule they go by, but
yeah.
I'm happy to stay clerk also. 'cause I've only been
I would
clerk
nominate
long.
Greg. I thought he did a very nice job at the last meeting.
We're gonna give Michael a
Yeah,
pass.
and just for clarity, mainly for you to know about, generally for boards and committees, clerk reads any public notices as well as would write the minutes. We have staff to write the minutes, so we don't have to worry about that as a board. So clerk is pretty much just reading public notices, and that's the only real difference. But they can get long sometimes.
all right.
Good practice.
So I heard a nomination for Greg. Did I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any other nominations for clerk? Hearing none. All those in favor of Greg?
Aye.
Opposed? Declare that motion carried unanimously. Next on the list is
that's two positions.
yes, there are two positions here. A member and an additional delegate to CMRPC.
Currently, the member is Bob, and I will nominate him to be the member. I am the delegate. I didn't have time this past year to attend any meetings for CMRPC like I expected to, so I'm happy to have someone else be our second delegate.
It doesn't, our delegate doesn't have to be a member of the board.
Correct.
It has to be a qualified voter in the town, but, we don't have a whole lot of people, you know, demanding it.
Now, if no one else wants it, I'd be willing to try it out. I've been on the board for many years and never served as a delegate or alternate to CMRPC.
And you saw what good food you get
Yeah,
in
really.
the annual meeting.
Yeah, count me in, man.
I'll nominate Bob. Dave.
Well, Bob for the primary
Yep,
delegate.
and Dave for the designate.
The alternate, yes.
It says designate delegate.
Yes.
Second.
All right. Any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The board has a representative to the Open Space and Recreation Committee, which
You've been doing it,
has
haven't
been
you?
me.
I nominate you.
Second.
Yeah, well, is there anybody else who?
Any other nominations for Open Space and Rec Committee delegate? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. The next, we have a board member to serve on the Community Preservation Committee.
That is currently me, but if someone else wants it strongly, I'll let them do it, right?
I nominate Justin.
Second.
Justin's been nominated and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Grafton Center Study Committee?
That's me. I created that around the time of the previous master plan. I think I'm the only living member of it, but we can create our subcommittees, and I like to have it there. Just, maybe someday it'll make a difference.
Then Bob, you're it. For my,
I nominate Bob to continue being the only living member of the Grafton Center Study.
Second.
Nominated and seconded. Any others? Hear none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next, we have board designates a member to serve on the Economic Development Commission.
I assume that's me on this one.
that is currently me. I would very happily hand that over to have one that's meeting. It's currently held once a month on Wednesdays. So
In the evening, or
evening is 7 p.m.
I do have other board commitments that are on Wednesdays, but I should be able to make it. So I would.
They
accept
recently moved it to Wednesday when I went on it, 'cause I informed them that I had a conflict with planning board. So they might be willing to change that
Do you
date.
know what Wednesday it is of the month?
I think it was last one was last week. I think.
They've changed it.
Yeah,
I'll
I don't
try and
remember.
see if I can find it quickly.
I so nominate him.
I would accept that one.
Second.
Okay.
So every third Wednesday, if we're going off of last week. Okay, if you can't do it, then.
I'm on a board for a school, and we're on the. I haven't seen next year's schedule yet, but it's the third Wednesday. That's what it's been.
They'd likely be open to changing the date. They've been pretty flexible on figuring out a.
Do you know what time it is?
They've typically had 7 p.m. lately, but previously it was 6 p.m. But they moved to 7 recently.
Okay.
The worst that happens is that it turns out you can't do it, and we make somebody else.
Yeah, we can change it. It's not cast in concrete here.
I will plan on doing it, and I'm usually my board meeting is usually 4 to 7.
I don't know that this has ever been the case with the EDC, but I know there is one committee that, due to various members' schedules, started their meetings at 7:45 to accommodate all the members. So
That was the housing trust.
potentially the commission will have some schedule flexibility, and if not, like Bob said, worst case, if you for whatever reason decide you're unwilling or unable,
Once the schedule comes out for my board meetings, I'll share it with you.
we can always change it if need be. It's not a lifetime commitment here. All right, so nominated and seconded for Mike to serve on the EDC as the board's representative. Any discussion here? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Honestly, I don't remember who made the motion. I think we're all.
Right. We have
Who made the
one.
motion for Mike? Do you remember?
Bob did.
Okay.
And who seconded it?
I did.
Thank you.
Our last reorganization item is to
Nominated him for.
vote to authorize the town planner to
And I
sign payroll and A&R plans on behalf
So
of the
moved.
board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. We have, what's left on our agenda?
At-
Not much.
At this
Traffic
point,
study.
let's get the clerk to update the web page, or whoever it is. Cause it's already, it's several weeks on a date. It still has Prabhu.
Yes,
That,
I will.
that section I think is the clerk that does that.
Yeah, I will connect.
Yeah, the
with
town clerk takes care of that.
I see Natalia's hand though.
All right.
I think she was.
Any update for us?
I just want to say they are aware of it. They just have not had time to deal with it.
Changing a couple of names.
All right. Anything new for us on the Grafton Common Traffic Study?
That the update that was uploaded into the record is the most current one that I have, and I have another conversation with them this week. Let me check. Yes, I have another conversation with them on the 25th. But yeah, the plan is to present to this the revised plan to the select board in lieu of an additional comment period. The scope of work doesn't. Unfortunately, they have to they have to meet a deadline with the state, and we thought that originally we could probably squeeze in another comment period, but there still will be a comment period as part of it, but it will just be looped into the select board meeting when they're reviewing the plan. So it's not like the master plan where we had like internal recommendations and staff provide their feedback, then we had a public comment period, then it's going to be streamlined to kind of. There was already an open house. Now we're just going to advertise the final plan with the feedback from staff and feedback from the open house, and then present it to the board and have the board show it in the meeting materials for weeks ahead of time so that people are able to read it and digest it. But
And this is the select board meeting that's next week, next Tuesday.
what's in
Yes.
the
Yeah.
what's in the
That was what was written. I just wanted.
yes what's in that? Sorry, my head's all over the place with different
All right.
deadlines. So
So that's it for that for now. We have no minutes of previous meetings.
no, not yet.
What do we have from the staff as a staff report?
So I won't go on too long, but we do have, I'm trying to get the hazard mitigation committee to meet in July. We did post that agenda so that we can update the hazard mitigation plan. So the board might see that is posted on the website, and it looks like it's a planning board agenda, which it is. The plan lives under the planning board, but it's actually a meeting posted for July, and it's not like a meeting of the planning board specifically. This is how we kind of structure it. It's without getting too complicated, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the hazard mitigation plan and how it works. But it's really the committee is staff internally that are in charge of implementing the plan. We have to have an annual meeting every 5 years and post it in the paper, and then incorporate feedback from the public and feedback from that meeting and share it with FEMA. And we have to do that every year. But the plan is in existence before we issue a new one. The lifespan of a plan is 5 years. So that is underway. Obviously, most of my time has been preoccupied with like decision writing and master plan related things. So we have an intern that's starting tomorrow from Worcester State. Really excited to have her start. Looking forward to assigning her some really interesting research projects that are in line with her urban planning studies at Worcester State. So I've had a lot of students reach out to me in the past, asking for interviews and such, and I connected with the university about having a partnership set up so that eventually we can get course credit, or maybe request like funding so we can fund interns and going forward. But for now, her name is Hira. She's starting tomorrow. We're very, very excited to have her. She's really awesome, very computer savvy, and really excited to learn. So, and we're going to be posting the position for the office assistant. The TA's office has already been working on that. Trying to get somebody in, because obviously it's really challenging for us being a 2-person show, as I'm sure Natalia can attest. So, just bear with us if we're not answering emails like immediately or taking a couple of days. It's just because we're short staffed, but we're working on it as best we can, and hopefully with getting an intern in as well, that will help us. Let's see. I think that's mainly it. I did a site walk for 8 Millennium Drive. Very well done. Construction looks great, and they're ready for their final CO. That was a manufacturing facility. They do like wiring and fiber. So it's very cool. And yeah, we're really excited, and we welcome them, to Grafton and congratulate them on getting over getting through the everything that they needed to quickly. I also have a site walk for 55 North Main Street, the new location of Truth Spa. So she should be almost ready to go. We're just waiting on the as-built plan from her, and I spoke to the engineer today about that. So hopefully we'll get her in a good spot soon. Wi-Fi hotspots project is well underway. The infrastructure's been installed in Mill Villages Park. They are coming back tomorrow to check the head end in Town Hall for some of the FMAN network infrastructure, and then they're going to be working on the other two sites, which is the Common and the fire station. So they really needed to access the head end mainly for the secondary fire station that's at Mill Street Park. There was a little bit of issues with the fiber. I guess there was some rodent damage at the fire station. Yes, apparently mice like to eat fiber.
They like glass.
I guess.
There's
So
glass in there.
yeah, so we had to partner with Comtract to replace that through our kind of general contract with them, and then they're going to install the hotspot now. But they're working really quickly. I mean, it was a long time to get this project rolled out, and now that we're here, they're really moving at the speed of light, and it's really great. So we're free town Wi-Fi at Mill Villages Park, Whitney Park, and the Common. So it'll be great, and all of those sites are on the FMAN network. We did originally try and provide it at Perry Hill Park, but due to issues with the permissions that were needed for the pole, I thought the pole that we were going to utilize was town owned, and it's not. So we'd need National Grid permissions, and that would take many years. So it's always something that we can revisit at a future date, or we can look at another site. But I think we're going to focus on these 3 sites that we have right now and just get those off the ground and pilot this project for the next year. And if it works out and there's enough users and the town likes the project, then we'll keep it going. So, and that's it. That's all I have.
I would have, we have an ongoing arrangement with the cable company about maintenance of our network.
Yes.
Something happens, it needs repaired, they do it, and we pay them, I suppose. And I would think damage to the installed system would actually be under that rather than under this project.
Yeah, you're right. It is, and we got the maintenance contract. We paid them for the rodent damage with that contract, not with the hotspots.
Okay.
All right, that's it from staff. Anything in correspondence caught anybody's eye? Reports from planning board representatives on town committees and CMRPC. Follow up from CMRPC?
Well, yeah, you mentioned it, Dave, that they gave this year's award for whatever community planning to Grafton. Fiona was in the middle holding it, right? There's a nice picture somewhere that, at least the center part of the picture is nice. There's some people over on the edges that are not so much. But that's a nice recognition.
Yeah. We're happy about it, and we can't wait to get it hung up. Get a nice spotlight on it. No, just kidding.
I thought you were going to have it hung up first thing that Friday morning.
I know. I meant to, and I went to go talk to facilities, and then I got distracted. I'm sorry. I will do it.
And surely that had to be the very highest priority on your work list.
It was until the phone, and then the phone rang. So yeah.
Well, yeah, that changed. You know, it's all too typical. All your plans for the day change the moment you get into the office.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will.
Can't
I
answer
will.
that first phone call or email.
I will follow.
In war, the first thing that goes is the plan.
The plans, yes.
No, I think you need to, where the glass is,
Mm-hmm.
just hang it on the back of the glass, so someone's standing there. Anything for you? You were there,
I was there.
and you're gonna be around.
Yes, apparently.
There are probably some committee openings if, never mind.
I mean, I have to be careful how many things I get myself involved in.
Yeah, many of us, need. Okay.
Yeah, it was a very nice awards dinner. I think the
Yeah.
it was a pleasure to be there to, you know, accept that award given to us for collectively all the work that we've done.
It was very nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
it was out at,
Salem Crossing.
Salem Crossing.
Yes. It was quite a drive. But
Quite a
it was
drive
worth
for you,
it.
Fiona.
Yes.
Very nice, so. Little tightly packed, a lot of people, there was like 170 people there.
Somebody from CMRPC said, well, I think they announced it at the meeting, that next year this dinner is gonna be at the Equatorium in Worcester.
Right.
That'd be closer.
In the meantime, there are quarterly meetings
Yep.
that, may or may be in person or may be.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't have anything to report from any other committees for which I am the board's representative. Any other such reports? I'm going to assume that we do not want or need to vote to extend the duration of our meeting past 10. And if there are no other items which may lawfully come before the board, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Got a motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned. And I get to sit back and just